The year was 2347, and humanity had finally earned its place among the stars. After 30 long years of careful talks and peaceful missions, Earth had been given a seat in the Galactic Council. This was a group of 12 ancient alien species who had ruled this part of the galaxy for thousands of years. Humans were proud. They had worked hard for this moment. They believed the future was bright. Admiral Daniel Carter stood on the observation deck of the USS Resolute, the finest ship in Earth's fleet. He watched as the blue marble of Earth grew smaller behind them. The ship was heading to Velther Prime, the home world of the Korvathi Dominion, the oldest and most powerful member of the Council. There was to be a ceremony to welcome humanity into the galactic family. Commander Lisa Morgan walked up beside him. She was holding a datapad, and her face looked troubled. "Sir, we just received a new transmission from the Council," she said quietly. "They are changing the terms of our membership." Daniel turned to look at her. "What do you mean?" "They want us to disarm. All of it. Every warship. Every defense station around Earth. They say it is for the safety of the galaxy." Daniel felt his stomach tighten. This was not what they had agreed to. Earth had spent decades building its fleet, not to attack anyone, but to protect their home. The galaxy was a dangerous place, and humans had learned that lesson the hard way. "That was never part of the deal," he said. "No, sir, it was not." The reason for this sudden change became clear in the days that followed. The Korvathi had grown afraid. Their leader, High Arbiter Zelthos, had watched humanity with growing concern. Humans were different from other species. They bred quickly. They adapted to new situations faster than anyone else. Their technology was simple but effective, and their soldiers fought with a fire in their hearts that made the elder races nervous. Zelthos called an emergency meeting of the Council. He stood before the gathered ambassadors and made his case. Humans, he said, were too dangerous. Their warlike nature was a threat to the peace of the galaxy. They must be brought under control before it was too late. Earth's ambassador was a calm and thoughtful man named Kevin Price. He had spent his whole life working for peace between species. When he heard the Korvathi demands, he stood before the council and spoke with quiet dignity. "Earth has always sought friendship with the galaxy," he said. "We have followed every rule. We have honored every agreement. We will not give up our ability to defend our home based on fear and suspicion." The council did not vote on the matter. They did not need to. The Korvathi controlled everything, and what they wanted, they got. 3 days later, the Korvathi fleet appeared in Earth's orbit. There were 12,000 ships, massive vessels bristling with weapons that could crack planets open. Earth had only 800 ships to defend itself. The numbers were impossible. Admiral Carter received the news while still aboard the Resolute. He immediately ordered all ships to return to Earth, but he knew they would never make it in time. "Sir," Commander Morgan said, her voice shaking, "they are not responding to any of our communications. They are just sitting there." "They are waiting," Daniel said grimly. "They want us to know what is coming." On Earth, people looked up at the sky and saw the alien ships blotting out the sun. Some ran for shelter. Others held their families close. Many simply stood and watched, unable to believe what was happening. The bombardment began at noon, Earth Standard Time. Great beams of energy rained down from the sky. Cities that had stood for centuries were turned to dust in seconds. New York, London, Tokyo, Beijing. One by one, the great centers of human civilization were wiped from the face of the planet. The attack lasted 6 hours. When it finally stopped, the silence was worse than the noise had been. 2 billion people were dead. The oceans boiled in some places. Smoke rose from every continent. The blue marble of Earth had become a wounded, burning world. From his flagship, High Arbiter Zelthos broadcast a message to every corner of the galaxy. Let this be a lesson to all who would challenge the natural order. Humanity has been punished for its pride. Any species that follows their path will share their fate. The Korvathi believed the matter was settled. They left a small garrison of ships in Earth's orbit to watch over the survivors. In their minds, humanity was finished. The humans would become servants, just like so many other species before them. They would learn their place and never threaten anyone again. But the Korvathi had made a terrible mistake. They had studied human history. They knew about the wars and the conflicts. But they had missed the most important lesson of all. Humans did not stay down when they were knocked down. They got back up. Every single time, Admiral Carter had survived. The Resolute, badly damaged and bleeding atmosphere, had escaped into the asteroid belt with 17 other ships. In the cold darkness between Mars and Jupiter, the remnants of Earth's fleet gathered together. On the surface of the ruined planet, survivors began to crawl out of the rubble. From bunkers and shelters from underground cities and ocean floor colonies, they emerged. They were burned and broken. They had lost everything they loved. But they were alive, and they were angry. In the weeks that followed, scattered groups made contact with each other. Military units that had survived in hidden bases. Scientists who had sealed themselves in laboratories. Ordinary people who had simply refused to die. A woman named Katie Brennan pulled herself from the ruins of Chicago. She had been a schoolteacher before the attack. She had watched her students die when the school collapsed around her. For 3 days, she dug through the rubble with her bare hands, looking for survivors. When she finally emerged into the ash-covered daylight, something had changed inside her. The kind woman who had taught children to read was gone. In her place was something harder, something that would never forget and never forgive. She looked up at the sky, where she knew the Korvathi garrison ships were watching. "You think you broke us," she whispered. "You think we are finished. But you have no idea what you have done. You have not destroyed humanity. You have only made us angry. And you will learn, as so many have learned before you, that there is nothing in this universe more dangerous than a human with nothing left to lose." She wiped the ash from her face and began to walk toward the distant mountains. There was work to be done. The stars had fallen silent over Earth, but in that silence, something was growing. Something that would shake the galaxy to its core. The Korvathi had wanted to teach humanity a lesson. Instead, they had just started a war they could not possibly win. 5 months had passed since the day the sky burned. Earth was a shadow of what it had once been. The great cities were gone, replaced by fields of rubble and ash. Radiation zones covered large parts of every continent. The air itself was poison in many places, but humanity refused to die. In the mountains of what had once been Switzerland, General Marcus Webb led 2,000 soldiers through a network of underground tunnels. These bunkers had been built centuries ago, designed to survive the worst disasters imaginable. They had done their job. "Keep moving," Marcus ordered. "We have a long way to go." His soldiers were tired and hungry. Many of them had lost their families in the attack. But they kept walking. They had a mission now, and that mission gave them purpose. On the other side of the world, beneath the waves of the Pacific Ocean, Dr. Nathan Cross worked in a laboratory that had survived the bombardment. The underwater colonies had been too deep for the Korvathi weapons to reach. Down here, in the cold darkness of the ocean floor, some of humanity's greatest scientific minds had lived through the attack. Nathan stared at a piece of wreckage on his table. It was a fragment of a Korvathi weapon, recovered from the ruins of what had once been San Francisco. "This is it," he said to his assistant, a young woman named Grace Turner. "This is how they did it. Their plasma technology. It is powerful, but it has a weakness." Grace leaned closer. "What kind of weakness?" The energy flow can be reversed. If we can figure out how to do it, we can turn their own weapons against them. It was the first spark of hope they had felt in months. In the asteroid belt, Admiral Daniel Carter had established a hidden base inside a hollowed-out rock. The 17 ships that had escaped the massacre were being repaired, piece by piece. It was slow work, but Carter was patient. He knew that rushing would only get more people killed. Commander Lisa Morgan brought him reports every day. News from Earth, messages from survivor groups, information about Korvathi patrol patterns. The garrison has grown lazy, she told him one morning. They do not see us as a threat anymore. They think we are finished. Daniel nodded slowly. Good. Let them think that. The longer they underestimate us, the more time we have to prepare. Prepare for what, sir? Daniel looked out at the stars. His eyes were hard and cold. For the day we make them pay for every life they took. On Earth, the survivors had begun to organize. Katie Brennan had walked for 3 weeks to reach a hidden military base in the Rocky Mountains. When she arrived, she was half-starved and covered in dust. But she was alive, and that was all that mattered. The base commander, a gray-haired woman named Colonel Patricia Webb, sister of General Marcus, welcomed her inside. You walked all the way from Chicago? Patricia asked. I did not have a choice, Katie replied. There was nothing left there. Patricia looked at the former schoolteacher with new respect. We can use people like you. People who do not give up. Katie joined the resistance that day. Over the following months, she trained harder than she had ever trained for anything in her life. She learned to fight. She learned to lead. She learned to kill. The woman who had once taught children to paint pictures was becoming something new. Something the Korvathi had never planned for. As the months turned into years, the scattered groups of survivors came together. General Marcus Webb emerged from his tunnels and linked up with his sister's base. Dr. Nathan Cross established a secure communication line from his underwater laboratory. Admiral Carter's fleet in the asteroid belt grew stronger. They called their plan Prometheus Rising. The name came from an old human story, a tale of a god who stole fire from the heavens and gave it to humanity. It seemed fitting. The Korvathi had tried to snuff out the fire of human civilization. Now, humanity was going to steal their fire and burn them with it. The work was hard and dangerous. Every supply run risked discovery by Korvathi patrols. Every new recruit had to be carefully tested to make sure they were not a spy. Every piece of equipment had to be built in secret, hidden from the eyes in the sky. But slowly, surely, the pieces came together. Dr. Nathan Cross made his breakthrough in the 3rd year. He figured out how to reverse the Korvathi plasma technology. The weapons that had destroyed Earth could now be turned against their creators. It works, he reported to Admiral Carter over a secure channel. We can build weapons more powerful than anything the Korvathi have. Carter felt something stir in his chest. It might have been hope. It might have been the beginning of satisfaction. How long until we are ready? 2 more years. Maybe less. Then we have 2 more years to prepare. Make sure every ship is ready. Every weapon is tested. When we move, there can be no mistakes. On Earth, Katie Brennan had risen through the ranks. She was a general now, commanding 10,000 soldiers who'd all lost something to the Korvathi attack. They trained in underground facilities, hidden from the garrison ships above. They practiced with weapons they had built themselves, using plans sent from Dr. Cross. Katie walked among her troops every day. She knew their names. She knew their stories. She knew what had been taken from them. We are not fighting for revenge, she told them during one of her speeches. We are fighting for something bigger than that. We are fighting for every child who will never grow up. For every parent who will never see their family again. For every dream that was turned to ash. We are fighting for the future of our species. The soldiers listened in silence. Many of them had tears in their eyes, but their hands were steady on their weapons. The Kalvathi garrison commander, a creature named Velthos the Younger, sent regular reports to his homeworld. He told them that humanity was broken. He said the survivors were scattered and weak. He assured the council that there was nothing to worry about. He had no idea how wrong he was thought in the 5th year after the attack. Everything was ready. The fleet was rebuilt. The weapons were tested. The soldiers were trained. Admiral Carter gathered his commanders for one final meeting. "Tomorrow," he said, "we begin taking back what is ours." The Kalvathi thought they could destroy us. They thought they could make us slaves. They were wrong. "Tomorrow, we remind the galaxy that humanity does not kneel. We do not break. We do not surrender." He looked at each of them in turn. "Tomorrow we rise." In the darkness of space, 400 black ships powered up their engines. On Earth, 10,000 soldiers checked their weapons one last time. The day of reckoning had finally arrived. The Kalvathi garrison station floated peacefully above Earth. It was a massive structure, bristling with weapons and sensors. For 5 years, it had watched over the ruined planet below. The crew had grown comfortable. They played games to pass the time. They complained about the boring assignment. They laughed at the pathetic humans scrambling in the dirt below. Velthus the Younger sat in his command chair, reviewing the daily reports. Everything was quiet, as always. The humans had not caused any trouble in years. He was already thinking about requesting a transfer to a more interesting posting. "Commander," one of his officers said, "there is something strange on the long-range sensors." Velthos sighed. "What is it?" "I am not sure. It looks like sensor ghosts. Probably just space debris. Run a diagnostic. Our equipment must be malfunctioning again." The officer nodded and turned back to his console. He never got the chance to run that diagnostic. 400 ships emerged from the darkness like shadows coming to life. They were painted black with holes designed to absorb sensor sweeps. The Kalvathi had never seen anything like them. By the time the garrison realized what was happening, it was already too late. Admiral Daniel Carter stood on the bridge of his new flagship, the USS Defiance. It was twice the size of the old Resolute, armed with weapons based on Dr. Cross's reversed plasma technology. "All ships," he said calmly. "Open fire." The first volley tore through the garrison station's shields like they were made of paper. Explosions ripped through the structure. Kalvathi soldiers ran for their escape pods, but there was nowhere to run. The human fleet was everywhere at once, cutting off every avenue of escape. Velthos the Younger managed to send a distress signal to his homeworld before his station broke apart around him. His last thought, as the fire consumed him, was that this was impossible. The humans were supposed to be broken. The battle for Earth's orbit lasted 47 minutes. When it was over, every Kalvathi ship had been destroyed. The garrison that had watched over humanity's prison was nothing but floating wreckage. "Commander," Lisa Morgan checked her screens and reported to the Admiral. "All enemy vessels eliminated. No survivors." Carter nodded. He felt no joy. No satisfaction. Not yet. "Launch the ground assault teams. General Brennan is waiting." On the surface of Earth, Katie Brennan stood at the entrance to the underground base. She wore combat armor now, painted with the symbol of the rising phoenix that had become the mark of the human resistance. Around her stood 10,000 soldiers, all of them ready to fight. "The fleet has cleared the orbit," her communications officer reported. "The sky is ours." Katie allowed herself a small smile. Vale allowed herself a small smile. "Then let us take back our planet." The ground assault was swift and brutal. Kalvathi ground forces had never expected an attack. They had grown as lazy as the garrison above. Human soldiers swept through their bases with a fury that shocked the alien troops. The Kovathi were taller than humans, stronger, better armed. But they had never faced an enemy like this. Human soldiers fought with a rage that came from 5 years of suffering. They took no prisoners. They showed no mercy. By nightfall, every Kovathi base on Earth had been captured or destroyed. Katie stood in the ruins of what had once been the main Kovathi command center. Alien bodies lay scattered around her. She felt nothing for them. They had shown no mercy to her students, to her neighbors, to the billions who had died in the fire from the sky. "General," one of her officers said, "we have captured their communications center. We can broadcast to the entire planet." "Do it." Katie stepped in front of the camera. Her face was streaked with dirt and blood, but her eyes were clear and strong. "People of Earth," she said, "today we have taken the first step toward freedom. The Kovathi garrison is destroyed. Our planet is ours again. But this is only the beginning. The enemy will send more ships. They will try to crush us again. They will fail. We have been through the fire, and we have come out stronger. They cannot break what has already been broken and rebuilt. Today, we remember our dead. Tomorrow, we make the enemy pay." In the asteroid belt, Admiral Carter watched the broadcast with his crew. When it ended, a cheer went up throughout the ship. After 5 years of hiding and planning, they had struck back. The impossible had become possible, but Carter knew the real fight was just beginning. "Set course for the Kovathi border," he ordered. "We are not waiting for them to come to us." The fleet moved out, leaving a small defense force behind to protect Earth. 400 ships sailing into hostile space, heading toward an empire that controlled thousands of worlds and millions of ships. It should have been suicide. The numbers were still impossible. But something had changed. The humans had proven that the Kovathi could be beaten, that their mighty technology could be overcome, that their warriors could fall. Word spread through the galaxy faster than light. The humans had risen from the ashes. They had destroyed their jailers. They were coming for revenge. In the halls of the Galactic Council, the news caused panic. Species that had ignored the human massacre now looked at each other with fear. If the Kovathi could be defeated, then anyone could be defeated. High Arbiter Zelthos called an emergency session. His face, usually so calm and superior, showed the first signs of concern. "This changes nothing," he declared. "A few hundred primitive ships against the might of the Dominion? They will be crushed like insects." But some of the other council members were not so sure. The Rithaki ambassador, a species that had long resented Kovathi dominance, spoke quietly to his aides. "Perhaps," he said, "it is time to reconsider our alliances." Zelthos dispatched a fleet of 30,000 ships to intercept the humans. It was the largest military force assembled in a century. He was certain it would end this nonsense once and for all. He was wrong. Admiral Carter had studied the Kovathi for 5 years. He knew their tactics. He knew their weaknesses. He knew exactly how they would respond to this threat. "They expect us to meet them in open battle," he told his commanders. "So we will not give them that battle. We will do what humans have always done best. We will adapt. We will improvise. We will fight in ways they have never seen." The human fleet scattered into the darkness of space. They became ghosts again, striking from the shadows, hitting supply lines and communication relays, vanishing before the Kovathi could respond. The great armada that was supposed to destroy humanity found itself chasing phantoms. Every time they thought they had cornered the human fleet, it was gone. And every time they let their guard down, they lost more ships. The Kovathi called it dishonorable, cowardly, against the rules of civilized warfare. The humans called it winning, and they were just getting started. The Galactic Council Chamber was the most impressive room in the known universe. It had been built 10,000 years ago, when the first species joined together to create a government for the stars. The walls were made of crystal that sang with the light of distant suns. The ceiling was so high that clouds sometimes formed beneath it. For millennia, this chamber had been a place of calm discussion and measured debate. Today, it was filled with fear. High Arbiter Zeltos stood at the central podium, his tall gray body rigid with barely controlled anger. Around him sat the representatives of 11 other species, and none of them would meet his eyes. "The situation is under control," Zeltos insisted. "The human fleet is small. Our forces will find them and destroy them." The Rethaki ambassador, a creature covered in shimmering blue scales, spoke up from his seat. "Your forces have been searching for 3 months. They have found nothing but empty space and destroyed supply ships. How is that under control?" Zeltos turned to face him, his black eyes narrowing. The Rethaki would do well to remember their place. The Kovathi have protected this galaxy for thousands of years. Protected? The Velthari ambassador, an ancient being who resembled a floating cloud of light, drifted forward. "You destroyed a planet full of civilians. You killed 2 billion sentient beings without warning or mercy. That is not protection. That is murder." A murmur ran through the chamber. Such direct challenges to the Kovathi were almost unheard of. Zeltos felt his control slipping. "We did what was necessary to maintain order. Humanity was a threat to galactic peace. And now they are a threat to the Kovathi dominion," the Rethaki said smoothly. "How interesting that the problems you create always become problems for everyone else." The session ended without resolution. For the first time in living memory, the council was divided. The Kovathi had ruled through fear for so long that they had forgotten what it was like to be challenged. Meanwhile, in the darkness between stars, Admiral Carter's fleet continued its guerrilla campaign. They struck fast and hard, then vanished before the Kovathi could respond. Commander Lisa Morgan had become the master of these tactics. She had spent 5 years studying every Kovathi battle, every patrol pattern, every supply route. Now she used that knowledge to tear the enemy apart piece by piece. 3 supply convoys destroyed this week, she reported to Carter during their daily briefing. The Kovathi fleet in Sector 7 is running low on fuel and ammunition. Carter studied the holographic map floating before him. Red dots marked Kovathi positions. Blue dots marked human strikes. The red was being slowly surrounded by blue. What about their reinforcements? Still searching the wrong sector. They think we are hiding near the outer rim. They have no idea we are right under their noses. Carter allowed himself a small smile. Good. Keep hitting them. Make them feel like there is nowhere safe. Make them afraid of shadows. On Earth, General Katie Brennan was dealing with a different kind of battle. The Kovathi had left behind their bombardment platforms when they fled orbit. These massive weapon stations had been used to burn cities. Now, Katie was turning them against their former masters. Dr. Nathan Cross had come up from his underwater laboratory to help with the conversion. His hair had gone gray in the years since the attack, but his mind was still sharp as ever. The targeting systems are almost ready, he told Katie. Within a week, we can hit anything within 10 light years of Earth. Katie nodded. Good. I want every approaching ship to know that Earth is no longer defenseless. She broadcast a message to the galaxy. It was simple and clear. Any vessel that approaches Earth without authorization will be destroyed. No warnings. No mercy. The same mercy you showed us. 3 council species tested this warning. The Kovathi sent a probe ship. The Threseri, who had always been loyal to the Kovathi, sent a small fleet. The Mordani, hoping to curry favor with their masters, sent an entire battle group. All of them were destroyed. The platforms that had once killed billions of humans now killed any alien who dared approach. The irony was not lost on anyone. In the council chamber, panic began to spread. The Thrazari ambassador demanded action. The Mordani threatened to withdraw from the council entirely. Species that had been loyal to the Korvathi for centuries began to question that loyalty. The Rithaki ambassador made a quiet proposal during a private meeting. Perhaps, he suggested, it was time to negotiate. The humans had shown their strength. There was no shame in making peace with a worthy enemy. High Arbiter Zeltos rejected this idea with contempt. The Korvathi do not negotiate with lesser species. We crushed them. But crushing the humans was proving harder than anyone had expected. Admiral Carter's fleet had grown bolder. They were no longer just hitting supply lines. They were striking at military bases, shipyards, research facilities. Every attack was carefully planned to cause maximum damage with minimum risk. The Korvathi public began to ask questions. Why was this taking so long? Why were human ships appearing in places they should not be able to reach? Why were Korvathi soldiers dying in a war that was supposed to be over before it began? Zelthos had no good answers. He only had more ships and more anger. He assembled a new fleet. 50,000 vessels this time. The largest military force in galactic history. He placed his finest admiral, a veteran named Corvus the Blade, in command. Find the humans, Zelthos ordered. Destroy them. I do not care how many ships it takes or how long it requires. End this. Corvus bowed his head. It will be done, High Arbiter. The great fleet set out, spreading across space like a net designed to catch ghosts. But the ghost had other plans. Admiral Carter received word of the approaching armada. He gathered his commanders in the war room of the Defiance. 50,000 ships, Lisa Morgan said grimly. Even with our technology advantage, we cannot defeat that many in open battle. No, Carter agreed. We cannot. So we will not fight them in open battle. He pulled up a map of Korvathi space. Their fleet is their greatest strength. It is also their greatest weakness. 50,000 ships require enormous amounts of fuel, food, and ammunition. They need supply bases, repair stations, communication relays. What happens if all of those things disappear? Understanding dawned on the faces around him. We do not fight the fleet, Carter said. We make it impossible for the fleet to fight us. We cut their supply lines. We destroy their bases. We turn their own territory into a trap. The campaign that followed was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Human ships appeared everywhere at once, striking targets that should have been impossible to reach. Korvathi stations fell silent. Supply convoys vanished. Communication networks went dark. Corvus the Blade found himself commanding a fleet that was slowly starving. His ships were running out of everything they needed to function. His crews were exhausted from chasing enemies they could not find. This is not war, he reported to Zelthos in frustration. This is something else. Something we do not know how to fight. Zelthos stared at the reports in disbelief. His empire, which had stood for 10,000 years, was being picked apart by a species that should have been dead. For the first time in his long life, the High Arbiter of the Korvathi Dominion felt something he had never felt before: fear. The human fleet appeared in the skies above Velthor Prime on a cold morning by Earth's calendar. It had been 6 years since the bombardment. 6 years of pain, of planning, of fighting from the shadows. Now, at last, they had come to the heart of the enemy. Admiral Daniel Carter stood on the bridge of the USS Defiance, looking at the world that had ordered the deaths of billions. Velthor Prime was beautiful from orbit. Its surface was covered in crystal cities that sparkled in the light of its twin suns. Vast oceans glittered between continents of purple and gold dot. It looked peaceful. It looked innocent. But Carter knew better. Every order that had burned Earth had come from this place. Every decision that had killed his friends, his family, his entire world had been made in those shining towers below. Admiral, his communications officer, said, "We are receiving a transmission from the surface. High Arbiter Zelthos wishes to discuss terms." Carter was silent for a long moment. He thought about the ruins of Chicago. He thought about the mass graves on every continent. He thought about Katie Brennan, who had once been a schoolteacher and was now one of the most feared military commanders in the galaxy. He thought about all the children who would never grow up. "Tell him," Carter said slowly, "that Earth does not negotiate with murderers." The battle for Velther Prime began with a precision strike on the planetary defense grid. Human ships, equipped with weapons based on reversed Korvathi technology, cut through the defenses like they were made of glass. Shield generators exploded. Weapon platforms went dark. In less than an hour, the most heavily defended world in the galaxy lay exposed. Korvathi ships rushed to defend their homeworld. Thousands of vessels, everything they could gather, threw themselves at the human fleet. They fought with the desperation of those who knew that everything depended on this moment. It was not enough. Human pilots performed maneuvers that should have been impossible. They pushed their ships beyond any safe limits, trusting their skill and their technology to keep them alive. Korvathi commanders watched in disbelief as their carefully planned formations were torn apart by enemies, who fought as if death meant nothing to them. On the surface, General Katie Brennan led the ground assault. Dropships carrying human soldiers punched through the atmosphere, landing in the heart of the crystal cities. The Korvathi had never imagined that anyone would dare to attack their homeworld. Their ground defenses were designed to stop rebellious servant species, not hardened warriors bent on revenge. Katie fought alongside her soldiers, moving through the alien streets with deadly purpose. The Korvathi civilians fled before them, screaming in terror. Katie let them go. Her target was not the innocent. Her target was the tower at the center of the city, where the Galactic Council held its sessions. The fighting was fierce. Korvathi guards threw themselves at the advancing humans, fighting to protect their leaders. They were brave, Katie admitted to herself. But bravery was not enough against soldiers who had already walked through fire. On the third day of the battle, Katie reached the council chamber. The great doors, which had stood for 10,000 years, exploded inward. Human soldiers poured through, sweeping aside the last defenders. High Arbiter Zelthos stood at the central podium, surrounded by the terrified representatives of the other council species. He was taller than Katie had expected, and his black eyes burned with hatred. "You cannot do this," he hissed. "The council will never accept a human victory. You will be hunted to extinction." Katie walked toward him slowly. Her armor was scorched and battered. Her face was streaked with blood that was not her own. She looked like something from a nightmare. "You had your chance to make peace," she said. 6 years ago, our ambassador stood in this very room and asked only for respect, for fairness, for the right to defend our home. You answered with fire and death. She stopped directly in front of him. Now you will live long enough to watch everything you built turn to ash. Outside, the battle was ending. The Korvathi fleet, leaderless and outmaneuvered, was surrendering ship by ship. Admiral Carter accepted their submissions with cold efficiency. There was no celebration on the human ships, only grim satisfaction. Ambassador Kevin Price had survived 5 years in hiding, moving from safe house to safe house, always one step ahead of Korvathi hunters. Now he walked into the council chamber, flanked by human soldiers. The other council species watched in silence as he took the central podium. The place where Zelthos had stood for centuries now belonged to a human. "The Korvathi dominion has fallen," Kevin announced. His voice was calm, but it carried to every corner of the chamber. "Their fleet is destroyed. Their leaders are in custody. Their empire is no more. He looked at each of the assembled representatives in turn. Earth demands recognition as a full member of the Galactic Council, with all rights and privileges thereof. Any species that objects is welcome to share the Korvathi's fate. There were no objections. The Rithaki ambassador was the first to speak. The Rithaki Collective welcomes humanity to the Council. We look forward to a new era of peace and cooperation. One by one, the other species added their voices. Some spoke with genuine warmth. Others spoke out of fear. It did not matter. The message was clear. Humanity had earned its place among the stars, and no one would ever try to take it away again. In the weeks that followed, the galaxy changed. The Korvathi Dominion was dissolved. Its member worlds were given the choice to govern themselves or join a new coalition, led by species that had been oppressed for centuries. Most chose freedom. High Arbiter Zeltos was put on trial for crimes against sentient life. The proceedings were broadcast across the galaxy. Billions watched as the evidence of his crimes was presented. The bombardment of Earth. The civilian deaths. The orders to show no mercy. When the verdict came, it surprised no one. Guilty on all counts. He would spend the rest of his long life in a prison cell, watching the empire he had built crumble into history. Admiral Daniel Carter returned to Earth as a hero. But he did not feel like one. He felt tired, old. He had given 6 years of his life to this war. And now he did not know what to do with the peace that followed. He stood in the ruins of San Francisco, looking at the memorial that had been built where the first bombs had fallen. 2 billion names were carved into the black stone. 2 billion lives that could never be replaced. General Katie Brennan found him there, staring at the names. "We won," she said quietly. "Did we?" Carter asked. "We destroyed an empire. We killed millions. We became the thing they feared." Katie stood beside him, reading the names of people she had known. Students, friends, neighbors. "We survived," she said finally. "They tried to wipe us out, and we survived. Not just that. We came back stronger. We proved that humanity cannot be broken. Not by bombardment. Not by slavery. Not by anything." She turned to look at him. "That is what we won. Not just a war. We won the right to exist. The right to be treated as equals. The right to never be pushed to the edge of extinction again." Carter considered her words. Slowly, something that might have been peace began to settle in his chest. "What happens now?" he asked. Katie smiled. It was the first real smile she had allowed herself in years. "Now we rebuild. We heal. We become better than we were. And if anyone ever threatens humanity again, we will be ready." She looked up at the sky, where the stars shone down on a world that had been burned and reborn. "They thought they had destroyed us," she said. "They only made us angry. And now the whole galaxy knows what happens when humanity gets angry." In the years that followed, Earth became a symbol, not of war or revenge, but of resilience, of the unbreakable spirit that refused to die no matter what the universe threw at it. Species from across the galaxy came to see the memorial, to walk through the rebuilt cities, to understand what humanity had endured and overcome, and they all left with the same thought. The stars themselves had learned to respect a species that could be knocked down 1,000 times and get back up 1,001. Humanity had earned its place in the galaxy, not through diplomacy or trade, through fire and fury and the simple refusal to accept defeat. The lesson was simple, and the galaxy would never forget it. Do not start a fight with humans, because they will finish it.